Okay, let's start now.
Great, yes.
All right, so my name is Tineshwaran. I'm a BIM consultant for GRAPHISOFT. And today's session, which is the first of 5 sessions, we will look at the introduction of Grasshopper. So we will start by understanding what is parametric design. This is crucial to be understood, as this is what mainly we will try to achieve by using Grasshopper. We will look at what Rhinoceros or Rhino is, and then what Grasshopper is. We will then go through at Grasshopper and Archicad's live connection, and we will top off the session on how to download and install this live connection, and maybe how to test it so that you guys can follow the coming sessions accordingly. Okay, let's start. So what is parametric design? And what is parametric design good for? And how does this relate to Grasshopper and especially to Archicad? Parametric design, algorithmic design, computational design, and generative design. All these terms carry about the same meaning, which is logic-based designing. The normal first few thoughts of parametric designs are usually, free-form surface, organic forms, rather than fixed geometry. But it's actually more than that. Parametric design is actually about achieving optimization in terms of design, manufacturing, and data takeoff. It is about organizing data and design. We can also manage multiple design variation in a short given time as long as we have parametric design workflow practice. It can also be a preparation tool for manufacturing. Ultimately, parametric design is a tool to support decision making throughout the design process. So in a case of traditional design process, we have certain factors that have to be met. This includes regulation, client requests, environment, functions, so on and so forth. I think most of you guys have been in projects before, so you know the kind of requirements that comes as the project moves on. So normally all these are processed in the brain of the architect, and the design variations are produced by the architect manually. So this is normally very time and energy consuming process, and it's not very effective. And I'm very sure that everyone has been in this situation before. So alternatively, with parametric or generative design workflow, the architect processes this information and the requirements and turns it into a main source code. And that source code generates the design variation by utilizing computing power. So this is parametric design workflow in a nutshell. So there isn't any manual. So once you have your design ready, and every time you get all this kind of new requirement coming in, you're changing the design again and again and again. So your revision numbers keeps going on, and the amount of effort and your work keeps piling up. But with source code, with parametric design, that you just have to input this kind of changes that comes in, and it will automatically use the computing power to regenerate different variation. So with this alternative workflow, it is easy to create such forms and design. All of these projects that I'm showing right here has actually been created in Archicad, supported by Rhino Grasshopper. So when I say it's easy, of course, it takes a lot of practice, takes a lot of time for you to master Rhino and Grasshopper, but eventually it comes to a stage where these are the kind of design, these are the kind of results that can be achieved. To understand how parametric design works in practice, we have to take a look at its framework. In our case, Rhinoceros or Rhino and Grasshopper, the leading software in freeform and parametric design. So let's take a look at what Rhino is. So Rhino is a general purpose freeform surface modeling software. By using Rhino, you are working with freely modifiable geometry, mostly surface, but without any function dedicated elements like those that you have in Archicad, such as beam, slabs, roof, and others. So you are just modeling surface geometry, and you're not creating any sort of information relevant to beam. So it's more like you're just using a morph tool to create an object, and as long as the object looks geometrically fine, and you're happy with that. So that is what you achieve by using Rhino alone. Rhino is predominantly used in architecture, interior design, product engineering, and it's actually very popular in jewelry design as well. They use it to design, say, diamond rings, so on and so forth. Other uses also includes CAD manufacturing, interior designs, like I mentioned, product design, product engineering, designing figures and movie sets, marine engineering, 3D printing, creation of prototype, animation, and even footwear design. So now let's look at what Grasshopper is, the program that makes parametric design possible for architects. To define Grasshopper, it is a visual programming editor. It is a parametric design plugin for Rhino, so you have to use it with Rhino. It is integrated with robust and versatile modeling environment, and it is generally used by creative professionals across diverse range of fields, including architecture, engineering, and all the fields that I've mentioned earlier. And when we speak about visual programming editor, this is what I mean by visual programming editor, also known as graphical algorithm editor, or you can also call it visual programming interface, which allows you to place different mathematical, geometrical, and logical operation. So looking at this the first time, it may look intimidating, but it's actually quite easy to understand, quite easy to use, quite easy to operate, and eventually transform to the outcome that you want. So what we do with Grasshopper is that we do not model the geometries, but we create modifiable logics behind the geometry. We use geometrical, mathematical, and logical operations to create an algorithm that will model the geometry instead. So this includes mathematical operations like addition, multiplication, negative, absolutes, logical commands like list or data operation, geometric operations like defining planes, vectors, and so on. Once you have the logic in place, by inputting the requirement, the algorithm will then model the geometry. So you are effectively designing a system that would build the building for you rather than building the building itself. Also good to know is that Grasshopper is a multifunctional tool. So besides creating algorithmic and form finding design, it is a great tool for energy and environmental analysis. It's a good tool for physical simulation, for structural simulation. It's a good tool for digital fabrication. And it's also known to be used in manufacturing for usage such as robot arm, tool parting, and so on. So now that we know what parametric design is, and we also know what Rhino and Grasshopper is, so let's look at how it all relates to Archicad. So at GRAPHISOFT, we teamed up with founders of Rhino and Grasshopper to create the best-in-class tool for the users. The result of this cooperation is the Grasshopper Archicad Live Connection, which offers an effective workflow. With the live connection, bidirectional connection can be established. With this connection, you are able to reference entire Archicad element in Grasshopper. The connection enables Archicad users to import and export Rhino models to seamlessly work with Rhino and Grasshopper. This connection allows to easily create native Archicad BIM elements with familiar nodes in Grasshopper, allowing to automate and simplify common and complex tasks. So effectively, you can work both, in a single project, you can work on both Archicad and Rhino Grasshopper. This is more of a visual of what I've just explained earlier. The definition or the algorithm in Grasshopper generates form model in Rhino, and at the same time, based on the same algorithm and definition, it also creates 3D element in Archicad, which then carries the BIM related information. So if you take Archicad out of the information, you're just doing free-form modeling, which is not suited if you're looking at a bigger picture of implementing BIM. But with Archicad in the picture and with the live connection, all this is made possible. Whatever that you can model using this free-form software will then be translated into elements in Archicad, and which also will carry relevant BIM information. I'm going to play a sample video here. So in this sample video, you can see the live connection between Grasshopper and Archicad, how it responds to changes that's being done in Rhino Grasshopper, to the changes that you're doing to the definition and to the algorithm. And you can also see how whenever you initiate a change in Archicad and how is that's being translated, being sent back to Rhino Grasshopper, and based on the algorithm, the changes is coming back to Archicad. So for example, if we are changing the slab of the balcony here in Archicad, what happens is that it sends that changes back to Grasshopper, and based on the algorithm and based on the definition that you have written, it then reflects back the changes accordingly. So this is something that what we can do is we can test it out towards the end of today's session. And of course, because you have that, the ability to produce variation is much, much faster compared to normally modeling all the variation from scratch. So what you can see here is what you can achieve once you have mastered how to use Grasshopper in creating freeform and reflecting that in Archicad. Right. So now let's see what are made possible with this live connection between Grasshopper and Archicad, and what can we achieve once we have this as a part of our workflow in our organization. Like I've mentioned earlier, with the connection now, rather than creating freeform surface geometry, you are now able to work with native BIM element and with all the BIM and all the advantage in a BIM environment, such as creation of metadata, creation of properties, creation of building materials, priority-based connection in Archicad, as you guys are aware of. So every single element that you initiate to be created on Rhino will then be created here, and in that that element actually carries information rather than just being a simple freeform element. And if previously you are able to create geometry on Rhino Grasshopper, when that 3D geometry is translated to Archicad, you can use Archicad's capability to produce the relevant documentation in a much faster manner. So most of you guys are aware how simple it is once you have your model ready in your Archicad, how simple it is to convert to drawings that you want, which includes section, which includes floor plan, which includes details, and so on. So in a similar case, rather than having the model being generated in Archicad, you're using the live connection to write an algorithm and to generate the model with the help of Grasshopper, Rhino and Grasshopper. And once the model is in your Archicad environment, you can then treat it as though the model has been created in Archicad form originally, and you can produce drawings and carry on with other workflows that you usually do by having Archicad in place. Right, same goes to QTO, or quantity takeoff. Once the model is in Archicad's environment, you can take advantage of the schedule functions that we have, and you can use this to support your quantification and of course to support your decision choice. So based on these schedules that you have provided, the quantification that has been generated, it can then further support your design choices. And now that you have metadata in your element, right? Like I've mentioned earlier, when you are converting or when you are generating the element in Archicad, you are also generating the metadata. You're also generating the information. And now that your models or your 3D geometry carries this kind of metadata, carries this kind of information, you can use graphic overrides to help with visualization, to help with analysis, and many more applications. So as what you can see here in the examples, some of the things that you can do includes visually analyzing the structural hierarchy, visually analyzing functional categories by floor, or you can also visually analyze the floor area, how it changes according to your building size and design. Okay, and of course now with Grasshopper, you can create geometries in Archicad that haven't been possible before. Only your creativity is to limit, and of course, how strong your knowledge is in Grasshopper is what limits the geometry that you can produce in Archicad. But as much as we are correlating the usage of Grasshopper to complex geometry, as what you can see, I would like to also stress that this can also be applied to much smaller scales requirement, as simple as automating tile setting out with opening, one of the items that we will cover in our upcoming webinar series, and creating simple structure and so on. So it's not always related to larger jargons or complex structure, complex design. You can also apply it to something as simple as a residential project, something as simple as a bungalow, so on and so forth. Right? With Grasshopper now, since you have a logic definition or algorithm that produces the model geometry for you, design decision can be better supported visually, as you can quickly generate multiple design variation with embedded information that would greatly assist your design process. So if previously you can only create geometry shapes to assist you in design decision, right? But at the moment, once you bring it into Archicad's environment, you can also produce quantities out of your possible variations. So all this can actually assist you. As much as the client side, they would want to have different designs according to their visions, but you can also support this kind of decision making with the data that you can extract, such as your quantification and so on and so forth. I'm going to be sharing some of the sample projects in architectural design that has been made possible thanks to Grasshopper and Archicad, done by architects around the world. This is the Somling library in Norway. It is a beautiful architecture with radial geometry and mainly constructed with timber. Next, we're going to look at art gallery in Auckland. This building was with the concept to restore the wonderful heritage while developing a complementary and flexible contemporary design. In fact, the application in this project was stretched up to the fabrication stage. Next, we look at EY Centre Sydney. You can actually see how it looked like when it was in a modeling stage and how it looked like eventually when it was constructed. So you can see the similarity. Actually, the one thing to wonder would be the amount of detail that goes onto the modeling. And the second thing is how whatever that you've modeled translate to what you have constructed at the end of the day. All right, so now let's look at how you can download and install Rhino Grasshopper. For Rhino 6 and Rhino 7, Grasshopper comes installed. So you just have to type Grasshopper command to access it. And meanwhile, if you're using Rhino 5 and lower, you have to download it from the Grasshopper 3D website. For the live connection with Archicad, you can access the download link via the QR code here. And you can also choose your Archicad version accordingly and download the appropriate add-in. Now, I'm just going to quickly show how it looks like on both Grasshopper and Archicad once you have installed this add-in. So what you can do is you can prepare this maybe prior to next session, or if you want to follow the session accordingly, or you can have it ready in your hardware, and you can follow it once we upload the recording of the webinar in our channels. So let me just launch my Rhino first. Right. So this is pretty much the UI of Rhino when you launch Rhino. And if you want to launch Grasshopper from here, just have to type Grasshopper on the command bar and enter. Right. So Grasshopper would of course load. And one of the key things that you can see once you have installed the live connection would be this Archicad toolbar here. And you can see all the Archicad element available for you to use. All right. So now let me just launch my Archicad. So once you have installed the Archicad Live Connection, so under File, under Interoperability, you should be able to see Grasshopper connection here, right? So when you run it, and normally this is how it looks like when you first run it, this palette, and when you click Start Connection, right, it should show the name of your Grasshopper file. So in this case, my Grasshopper file is unnamed, right? If you go back to my Archicad, yeah, it's linked to a Grasshopper file that's called unnamed. Right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw maybe a very simple polyline here. just to show you how this polyline will now be reflected in my Grasshopper environment. So I have this line. So I'm going to go to Grasshopper. Right. So under parameters, under input parameters, I'm going to choose 2D curves. I'm going to place this component box here. So once I've placed it, you can see a error here, which says that floating parameter 2D curves failed to collect data. So I'm going to show you how you can link this component box to the line that you have drawn. It's as simple as right-clicking it and selecting Set one 2D curve in Archicad. When you click it, you should open your Archicad window, and it's as simple as selecting the line. Right? So once that line or the geometry that you've drawn in Archicad is linked to this component box, the component box will turn white and you will not see any error, and it will say that okay, it is now has one locally defined value. Right? So now with this 2D curve, what I'm going to do is I'm going to design a wall out of it. So under the design tool, I'm just going to select wall, and I'm going to place the component box. Right? And now I'm going to link the 2D curve that I've drawn. Right? So it's the input curve here. I'm just going to link it. Right? So both the boxes are white. And if you go back to your Archicad window, you can see that the line that you have drawn is now a wall. There you go. So of course, this is a very simple session. I mean, a very simple demo of how you can address the connection between Archicad and Grasshopper. So another thing that you can do is if you select the line, and let's say you shorten the polyline in Archicad, right? I'm going to shorten it to half, so you can see that my line is shorter now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send these changes that I've done in Archicad down to Grasshopper, and the changes goes in. And since that 2D curve has been shortened, and I want the 2D curve to be wall, and you can see that it is now being generated as a wall, as a shorter wall. Same goes if I try to make it longer. Right, so I just have to send, automatically sends the changes, and you can see that the length of the wall has been changed. Right. You can have this ready in your machine prior to maybe next session if you want to follow the webinar accordingly. But if you want to watch and follow it later on, this one way for you guys to test your connection. And if you have any issues or any problem, you guys can reach us out, and we can try to help you as much as possible. Right? Okay, so let me just go back to my slides at the moment. Okay, so that's pretty much what we have for today. Actually, we've ended much earlier than what we thought we would. But let me just continue my slides first. Do follow us on social media. This is one thing that I would like to share. We post updates regularly. We post a lot of interesting contents regularly. We have a channel on Instagram, we have a channel on Facebook, and we do have a channel on LinkedIn as well. So feel free to scan the QR code. I'm just going to leave the QR code on the page maybe for 30 seconds or so. Right. And also do follow us on our YouTube channel. The recordings of the webinars, once it's ready, we will post it here on our channel. And we also have contents from previous webinar that we have carried out. So feel free to explore the channel, feel free to watch and follow. And in case you guys have further questions from the webinars that you watched, please do feel free to reach us out and we can clarify it for you. All right, that's me, and thank you. All right, do you guys have any question and answers? So any questions that we can answer for you? So in the coming sessions, what we do have some interesting use case to share with you guys. Following next week, we will be sharing a very interesting sun shading tool. So this particular sun shading tool actually reacts to the direction of the sun in the model. And another thing is how we can create a very beautiful and complex building, which will be carried out by my colleague Vimal. So if you have any questions in regards of setting up your Grasshopper prior to next session, feel free to ask. And if you like me to share anything further in terms of Grasshopper, Rhino Grasshopper, or its live connection, they will be able to share as well. So do let us know.
Hello everyone. Vimal, Vimal, can you hear me?
Yes, Shidam, we can
Vimal,
hear
can
you.
you? Yeah, yeah, sure. There is some questions on the chat panel. Maybe Vimal, you can address those.
Okay, I can see most of them are answered. Um, so yeah. Okay, so there was a question whether we can get rid of Rhino and just use Archicad and Grasshopper. We cannot do that because Grasshopper is a component inside Rhino. So we are just using the Grasshopper to connect with Archicad. So basically what Chidam told us, right? We need not learn Rhino for it. We just have to learn how to use Grasshopper. And then we can just use it with Archicad with the live connection. So on the future sessions, we'll show you with some of the examples how you can do that. And as Catherine Lok told, so we'll be trying to make it more interactive by giving some assignments or something so that you can just practice it before you come for the next session. So for this session, you guys can just try to install um, the Rhino Grasshopper connection and also try to create a connection like what Dinesh showed just now to have a polyline created on your Archicad, and then you can just bring that polyline geometry into Grasshopper, and then from Grasshopper you can create a wall, so which will be parametric basically. So you can change the polyline length and then send the changes that you have made inside Archicad to Rhino. So Grasshopper will capture it and then you can do the changes there. So that would be the like first assignment, to just do the installation and test the connection between both. Okay. Okay, so okay, so will there be hands-on tutorial in this series of webinar? We'll be showing some of the examples on the webinar, so you can just try it out on your own. Since it's just a webinar, we may not be able to wait for everyone to do the hands-on. So we will just show samples, sample projects. You can just try it out on your own. Okay. Okay, so the difference between Paramo and Grasshopper. Uh, Paramo is an object making tool with this inside Archicad. So it is different from the Rhino Grasshopper. So it's not the same. So using Paramo, you can just create parametric objects within Archicad. Okay, as Catherine Lok told, we will try to make it more interactive by giving some assignments for you guys to practice before you guys come for the next session. Okay, I guess usual website. Yeah, so we will share, Xavier, we will share the link from where you can learn Grasshopper and Archicad connection with you through email. So any other questions you guys have? Okay, in Paramo can also do complex object. Yes, you can do complex object. You can achieve some. You can achieve complex parametric objects inside Paramo also. You can do that. So there are some previous webinars that we have conducted earlier to use how to use Paramo. Maybe you can watch those webinars on our YouTube channel. So I will share the link of our YouTube channel on the chat. Just give me a minute. All right, I have shared the link for our YouTube channel. You can go to the playlist and check for different topics there.